Welcome to our webinar. We're still waiting for some more participants to log in, and we'll start in the next few minutes. Thank you for your patience. Good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to our regional webinar, Modern Warehousing is Arriving at Scale, organized and hosted by Hong Kong Business Association Vietnam and sponsored by Becamex Hospitality. We have over 290 registrations from 18 different destinations around the world, as far away as the US and UK, and as unexpected as the Afghanistan and India. This is one topic of serious interest, I can assure you. My name is Winnie Lam. I am the General Secretary of the Hong Kong Business Association, Vietnam, and I am the COO of Colliers International here. I've been working in Vietnam since 2005 in various leadership positions, including a few years for the region, and I will take you through the webinar today as well as moderating the panel. I would like to start by thanking our sponsor, Becamex Hospitality, for sponsoring the webinar today. Becamex's main businesses are located in Binh Duong, which is one of the earliest industrial hubs and still home to much of the industrial and warehousing activities in the south. Keep an eye on their latest venture, the World Trade Center Binh Duong New City. It is going to be the new destination for international trade activities in the southern key economic zone of Vietnam, with its mission to promote sustainability and innovation for industrial activities. And our guest speakers today include Mr. John Campbell, Manager of Industrial Services, Savills Vietnam, Mr. Alexander Olsen, Director, Head of Commercial, Indo-Trans Logistics, and Mr. Michael Chen, Head of Sales and Marketing, BW Industrial Development. It is my honor to be hosting you today. Thank you. We have 16 national and regional organizations to co-host our event today. Let me give a minute to thank all of them. In the region, Hong Kong Trade Development Council, Hong Kong Australia Business Association Limited, the Hong Kong Malaysia Business Association, Hong Kong Singapore Business Association, China Real Estate Chamber of Commerce, Hong Kong and International Chapter, the Chinese General Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. And in Vietnam, we are very glad to be co-hosting with ASEAN, BRICAM, the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, the Council of Taiwanese Chambers of Commerce, Indian Business Chamber, Malaysian Business Group, Singapore Business Group, Italian Chamber of Commerce, the Thai Business Association, and Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam. Today's events consist of 3 short presentations and a panel discussion to follow, where you can raise questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A tab on your toolbar. For good housekeeping, we have muted the microphones and videos of all the participants, and please use the Q&A chat panel only. Any questions we're not able to answer, we will get back to you on emails later privately. If you have encountered any technical issue during the webinar, our very first suggestion is for you to log out and log in again. So without further delay, I am sure John is ready. Let me quickly get Mr. John Campbell to start the first presentation. John joined Savills in 2017 to develop the Industrial Services Department and further strengthen Savills' position and leadership in the Vietnam market. John's background is in integrated facility management sector and outsourcing building management solutions for production facilities. John is going to share with us today on Vietnam opportunities and challenges post-COVID-19. I'm handing the platform over to you, John, if you'll turn on your microphone and the video, and please host your presentation in projection mode so that we can have a better view. Thank you. So John, when you are ready, take away.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me just pull up my slides here so everybody can see. Okay. All right, how was that? Are we visible?
Yes, we are good, Mike. John.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to get started now then. Thanks again, Winnie. And thank you all for tuning in this morning. And a special thanks to Winnie and Tracy and the Hong Kong Business Association for organizing and hosting this event to highlight the exciting potential of Vietnam's industrial logistics and warehousing sector. It's a real pleasure for Savills to be, I've been invited to share our insights with everyone today. And I hope you find my presentation useful. As Winnie said, if there's any questions we don't get back to at the end, feel free to follow up with me by email, but we'll do our best to answer as much as possible at the end of the session. Okay, so to begin, we already did an introduction for me, so I'll just go straight into the presentation. My presentation, I'm going to cover some of the industrial and logistics opportunities and outlook for Vietnam, including its challenges in the post-COVID environment, with a particular emphasis on the property trends that they pose. So the last 20 years has seen Vietnam transition from an agricultural-based economy to one of the most exciting industrial and logistics hubs in Asia. In the last 20 years, we've seen the country transition from low-skilled and labor-intensive industries towards higher-value industry. And with the recent US-China trade war, new free trade agreements, the opportunity for manufacturing and logistics is greater than ever. So let's begin with a quick overview of the ASEAN region. So I guess some key takeaways here would be Vietnam's relatively large size, over 330 kilometers. Its large and young population of around 96 million people, giving rise to a young and dynamic workforce. And of course, its fast-growing GDP. Although GDP has slowed down this year, forecasted to be around 2.4, 2.6. Same forecasts estimate that next year the country should be back up to 6.8%, but time shall tell. It's very volatile at the moment for most countries in Asia, especially amid COVID-19. More interesting, if we look at the top numbers here, we see the total number of industrial parks and supply in Vietnam. So the country has 327 established industrial parks, which is quite significant for a country of its size, and quite a lot more than some competitors in Southeast Asia, a lot more than Thailand and Indonesia. Under that, we have one of the traditional key drivers, low labor costs. So at the bottom here is the minimum wages average in the manufacturing. So it's around $160 in Vietnam. Predominantly, this has always been one of the key drivers for low value added manufacturers in the past. So also have manufacturing worker salary here. So a bit higher at $237 a month. These are the averages in the key industrial provinces. You can see they're quite a lot lower than Malaysia and China, around 1/3 of China at the moment. And on the right, we have the factory construction costs from the Turner and 2018 construction survey. And you can see there the construction costs for building basic warehousing, large distribution centers, and even high-tech factories is lower across the board than other places like China, India, and so on. So one of the tangible, I guess, in the regional sense, Vietnam versus China and who has been benefiting post-trade war. So there's some interesting figures here from the US Census Bureau, and this shows us that US imports from Vietnam rose 35% at the end of 2019, while imports from China to the US have dropped significantly to minus 16.2%. So Vietnam obviously has a big dependence on US exports, in particular with telecommunication devices like smartphones and mobile phones, such as Samsung's factory and LG and so on. So this makes up a big part of Vietnam's exports commodities. So what are the drivers? What traditionally, for those who would be less familiar with the industrial sector here, what are the traditional key drivers in this industrial sector? Obviously, labor costs, as I mentioned before, which is particularly interesting to low value added manufacturers, textiles, furniture. Affordable land price and sea freight, although land price is rising quite a lot in the past 2 years, still remains competitive globally. Favorable corporate income tax incentives and preferential incentives exist, offered by the Vietnamese government for certain projects, if it's high tech, supporting high tech, or in a difficult socioeconomic zone, a special economic zone, some companies can apply for the preferential tax incentives. As I mentioned at the beginning, the country's large and young population of around 96 million people, which gives rise for the young and dynamic workforce, which is very important for international investor. Its geographical location near source and destination markets on the southeast of the Indo-Chinese Peninsula. Vietnam has a location that gives it access to the world's major seaborne trade routes. And as an alternative to China, the country has a stable government, a fast growth rate, and an overall improving business climate. I would say in 2019 and this year, 2020, in terms of main key drivers, I think the biggest highlight would be Vietnam's multiple free trade agreements. So last year, we see the CPTPP signed in January 2019. We also see in June last year, the EVFTA being signed, the European Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. And this year, just recently, we've seen over the summer, the official ratification of the EVFTA, both from the EU Parliament and also from the National Assembly in Vietnam. So now we're official, so to speak. So there's big expectations on this agreement. Looking in more detail here in it. So the agreement is the most ambitious and historic in Vietnam's history. It aims to eliminate 99% of custom duties between both sides. It also demonstrates Europe's ongoing commitment to developing trade pacts with developing economies. In terms of numbers, it's estimated to increase Vietnam's GDP by about 4.6% and exports to EU by 42%. On the other side of the coin, it's estimated to boost the EU's GDP by about $29–30 billion by the end of 2035. So it's quite interesting, you know, this whole agreement, this means that the type of industries and the type of countries looking at Vietnam is changing. And beyond the numbers there's some other important things to look at. Of course, the latest production technologies overall, that's going to improve workforce training, but also knowledge and technology transfer is very important. So as these higher value investments are considering Vietnam, this is also going to facilitate the country's movement towards high value added industries away from low value added manufacturing. So as we have this technology and knowledge transfer coming, it's going to increase the standards and level of skilled labor in Vietnam. All right, moving on to some stock industrial land supply. We'll talk a bit more about this at the end as well, but just to give you an indication of the size in terms of property for the industrial segment here, I mentioned in the first slide, Vietnam has I think established 327 industrial parks. So that lies on approximately 96,000 hectares. Industrial leasable area of that is about 65,000 square meters. So of those 325 parks, 256 are operational, with occupancy nationally reaching about 75%. So it's an interesting figure, 75. So that tells us that demand is outpacing supply. So there's clearly a need in Vietnam now for more industrial park projects, especially in the key industrial provinces like Bình Nhưỡng and Dong Nai in the south, and like Bac Ninh, Hưng Yên, Hai Phong in the north. So this is an area that Vietnam is trying to move very quickly on. Developers are trying to move quickly to make more stock by converting agricultural land for industrial usage. Hopefully the red tape and the bureaucracy that's involved can be sped up so that next year when the travel restrictions are lifted and more companies are moving out of China, Vietnam can accommodate them with enough supply. So there you go, 71 industrial parks are under construction, site clearance and compensation. This will ensure a bit of further supply, but obviously we need more in some of those provinces. On the right there, I just showed the three main economic zones of Vietnam: North, Central and South. The Central Economic Zone in terms of industrial is a bit behind or in its premature stages compared to the North and the South, which are the major industrial hubs at the moment, although the Central Economic Zone has been gaining some momentum in recent years due to this process. So let's look at a comparison between the two biggest, the North and the South. The North is generally known for having better developed transportation network links. It has better prime industrial land in between new infrastructure developments. Due to its proximity to China, there's a lot of investment coming from China as well, and a heavy industry focus. So the general consensus is the bigger or heavy industry projects go to the North, while the smaller, more diversified projects go to the South. Some big developers there. We have, of course, deep sea industrial zones. So Alex is going to talk more about their operations and their supply later. VSIP, which have a diversified national portfolio in the North and South. Kinback City Corporation, VID Group, or now T&I Corporation, and Big Lacera. So the southern counterparts, on the other hand, Ho Chi Minh City in particular is known as being the economic or industrial center of Vietnam. Some people call it the commercial center of the country. Ho Chi Minh, unlike Hanoi, has a port within the city, which is a big advantage. So we have Cat Lai Port in District 2 in Ho Chi Minh, whereas the closest deep capacity port to Hanoi, the closest one is in Hai Phong. We have more educational institutions driving the supply of skilled labor. A lot of younger people from the North also come down to college or university in the South, and diversified sector investment. So while the big Samsungs and LGs go to the North, the big projects, you can find a bigger variety of projects in the South. Anything from F&B, FMCG, electronic components, textiles, furniture, you can find in the South. VSIP again is another key developer here. Their very first project in Vietnam was in Bình Nhưỡng. As Winnie said at the beginning, probably the first proper industrial hub in Vietnam. We also have state-owned companies, Sonadesi in Saigon VRG, and Tin Nha Corporation and Ideco Group. All right, so moving on to looking at some of the investment in the first half of the year.
I hate to hurry you,
FDI
John. You have a lot of slides to go through, so if you can speak a little bit faster, we won't be overrunning too much, please.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so let's look at the H1. So we have 51% of investment was attributed directly to manufacturing and processing. So this is up quite a lot from, I believe, 23% in Q1. So that's a total of $8 billion directly, which is a big improvement for the first 3 months of the year post-COVID. Okay. So just a quick look at the manufacturing PMI. So the first quarter of the month, the PMI has dropped significantly, and then in the second quarter of 2020, it's moved up again. So PMI has soared to 51 points, up from 42.7 in May, and the index of industrial production has also improved significantly, from up 7% a year on year in June. So I'm going to move directly on to some of the COVID implications. So Vietnam's performance in the first half of the year combating COVID basically is attributed to the country's robust and growing middle class, the dynamic business sector. Of course, it's continued public spending to contain the pandemic, and ramping up infrastructure spending from the government side. In the long term, Vietnam is confident due to its new trade agreements, as I discussed with the EVFTA. This means the country will be well positioned to bounce back and prosper. And one important consideration is also the acceleration of manufacturers moving out of China next year when the travel restrictions are lifted. We're expected to see a lot more manufacturing and logistic investment in the country. So just to move on there to some of the logistics. So here, the logistics platform, basically to describe the 1970s to now, we would describe Vietnam's market landscape as tactical driven to a strategic and service driven model. Third-party logistics, or 3PL, retail, e-commerce and manufacturing are currently the main drivers of the warehouse market. However, there's quite a lot of competition for last mile delivery supply. So demand is driving up warehouse spaces near the central business districts in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, and this is increasing warehouse rental prices in the market. Logistics overall is still one of the fastest growing industries in the country. It's estimated to be valued at around $86 billion by the end of 2022. On the right hand side there, just to show some key mergers and acquisitions. For foreign investors trying to get in on Vietnam's fastest growing segment, it's very important they have strong local partners. So we see Symphony International Holdings invest over $42 billion for a 28% stake in ITL Corporation. We have Sumitomo from Japan investing in Hkbav Logistics, and CJ Logistics investing in Hkbav as well with $125 billion. So for foreign investors to succeed in logistics and warehousing market, it's very important to have the local partner who has good land supply. You can see here the difference between local and foreign. Although the local guys do have the better land supply, they offer limited added value services and have restricted access to capital and technology, whereby when they form a partnership with the foreign investors, they can use their more professional management models, their automatic tracking and inventory management, their third-party logistic models, and they can form a joint venture that route. And the reason they need to form these joint ventures is you'll see the foreign guys at the top like DKSH and Damco, very limited supply nationally compared to some of the big Vietnam groups like TBS or Saigon Newport with over 115 hectares. Okay, so just wrapping up in a couple of minutes, just to look at a quick SWOT analysis of the warehousing logistics market. The weaknesses are underdeveloped infrastructure and overburdening of road networks is very difficult for logistics. Uncompetitive fuel costs is driving up supply chain costs. And as I mentioned, decreasing vacancies near central business districts is rising the costs, rising the prices of the warehouses. Opportunities include the foreign investors under Government Decree 163 are now allowed to set up logistic companies in Vietnam under certain terms and conditions. The government's 5-component infrastructure plan, whereby it's given the green light for investment in logistics and intermodal transport network links around industrial parks and central and special economic zones. We have threats, limited land for last mile delivery, increasing labor costs regionally, emerging competitors in Indonesia and Cambodia, dated infrastructure, and the general cost of doing business, which refers to the the general cumbersome administration costs involved in doing business here, which need to be sorted out. Overall challenges, productivity levels and shortage of skilled labour. The country still has a big dependency on foreign investment and trade, consistent increases in minimum wage. Logistics performance has improved a lot in the last 2 years. However, logistics costs still remain one of the highest in Asia. And of course, the decreasing vacancies near the cities rising up the rental prices. So moving forward, the Vietnam government has made its recommendations to attract higher value industry by creating the National Development Skills Plan, modernizing investment promotion activities and to focus on priority sectors like high tech, smart warehouses and distribution centers, implementing support programs for local firms, not just supporting the foreign investors, opening service sectors across education, logistics and financial services, and setting up a new FDI management agency with better authority and budget to focus on attracting the best quality projects. And finally, preparing to harness the benefits of the upcoming Industry 4.0, which is of course not just a trend in Vietnam, but happening globally. For Vietnam's in the logistics sector, the questions the logistics players need to ask themselves is, how can they leverage robotics and automation to use in their distribution centers and warehouses to reduce labor and operational costs? So overall, to conclude, the market has been doing quite well in the first half of the year. Despite COVID-19, the market is set to rebound quite quickly next year, as we see the relocation wave coming from China and more companies like Apple suppliers, Foxconn, all of the Japanese companies which have been moving out of China upon the $2.2 billion stimulus package from the Japanese government. We have our traditional key drivers there, with the key labor costs still playing a key role in the low value added industries. We have more investment needed in the transport network infrastructure to reduce the overall logistics costs in Vietnam, which is still one of the highest in the Asian region. We have the growing retail and e-commerce market is one of the main drivers of the logistics sector. And finally, large transactions in high value industries and better FDI projects will continue to boost investor confidence globally in Vietnam. All right, so thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. It's quite a lot to cover, so if there's any questions after, please do follow up, and we'll be sharing some PDF slides. And yeah, any questions that we can't answer, feel free to get in touch directly. Thanks, Winnie.
All right, thank you, John. You have no idea how many times my finger is on the button trying to cut you off, but the information is just too good to miss. And John has now set the stage. If you are not coming to Vietnam yet, you don't know what you are missing out. So without further delay, let's Alex tell us about what's next. Alex is a Danish national on his 5th year in Vietnam. He has previously held management positions in US and Canada before relocating to Vietnam for regional management position for Shipco Transport. Alex joined ITL in 2018 as the commercial director and is also responsible for developing and implementing the commercial strategy, global agency networks, procurement, and lead ITL's commercial teams in Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos. The IFC, a member of the World Bank, just announced on August 11 that will provide a $70 million loan to ITC with the aim of improving logistics, trades, and competitiveness in Vietnam economy and COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure Alex will touch on the grand plan of ITL Vietnam through his presentation about Vietnam warehouse logistics needs and developments. Alex, over to you when you are ready.
Thank you, Winnie. Let me share my screen here.
And if you can turn on your video, we would like to see you.
Absolutely. There we go.
If you can put on projection mode, then we would even see it better.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Winnie, and thank you, John, for a great presentation. So I will take a bit of your time to talk a little bit about Vietnam's warehouse logistic needs and trends and developments. I will start with a quick introduction of why I'm invited to be on the panel today, and then I will talk a little bit about Vietnam's logistics development. I will talk about 4 new trends in the Vietnam logistic and warehouse industry. There I will touch base a bit on the increased security standards, Vietnam's growing e-commerce market, mergers and acquisitions, which I'll probably skip a bit as John has pretty much covered that part. And then I will talk about the DC bypass and outsourcing destination handling, which is a big trend in Vietnam as well as other countries. So first, I will talk a little bit about just a quick introduction. So my name is Alexander Olsen, and I'm the commercial director for ITL. ITL is a Vietnamese company. We are covering 6 countries in Indochina. We have 90 offices and around 2,000 staff, and we are covering 70 cities. ITL was founded in 2000, and in 2010 we received our first investment from Singapore Post. And as John just mentioned, in 2019, Symphony Asia also made a quite big investment in ITL. Our head office is here in Ho Chi Minh, and we are one of the largest logistic companies in Vietnam. We are top 500 biggest companies in Vietnam and top 50 the best. Here is a list. ITL is a group of many companies. I don't want to go into the details, but we have companies all from airline GSA to warehouse companies to port operation and e-commerce. So first, I'll talk a bit about the Vietnam logistic developments. So the logistic industry is one of the fastest industries in Vietnam. Is the GDP growth the industry is of the GDP is 20 to 15%. So, in terms of the much higher than the global average. The average is around 11%, and the GDP here is in Vietnam is around 20%. Vietnam has a lot of developments in terms of the infrastructure. There has been a big development in the Hai Phong port. There is Cai Mep port has had a lot of developments. There is building a new airport in the south of Vietnam. But however, the development is far below its needs in terms of the road system. So Vietnam, John mentioned a bit about how big the country is, but the road system is only 250,000 kilometers long. Out of that, only 20% is paved, and 40% of the network is very poor condition, which is creating a lot of challenges for trucking and domestic transport in Vietnam. Vietnam's government have recently approved to build the highway between the north and the south, but is estimated to be finished in 2030 and cost $40 billion. So that is, just to conclude, that is probably going to help the logistic industry a lot. But the question we ask ourselves is this enough? Then now I want to talk a little bit about the new trends in the Vietnam logistic industry. So, and especially on the warehouse. So we're seeing a big increase in security standards. There is the Vietnam's growing e-commerce space. We have FDI, mergers and acquisition in the logistic industry and the warehouse industry in Vietnam. DC bypass and outsourcing of destination handling. So first, because of what John also mentioned about the foreign investment and the products that is moving, or the manufacturing moving from China and other countries into Vietnam, that we are seeing a massive need and an increased expectation in the security standards. Vietnam, previously, a lot of the warehouse, a lot of the logistic industry has been kind of a little bit undeveloped. Because we have not seen the funding in the past. The past few years, the market and the customers moving manufacturing to Vietnam are requiring certificates such as TTPAT and TAPAT, which is all international standards in terms of how to run warehousing, both in terms of the quality of the warehouse, but also the security standards and the SOPs, etc. This is a massive trend, and it's very expensive for the logistic companies to comply with these standards, where the current warehouse location has not been certified in order to meet these standards. So a lot of new warehouses are being built. There is complying with the international standards such as TTPAT and TAPA. Second trend that I want to talk a little bit about is the growing e-commerce market. So Vietnam e-commerce market is expected to reach 15 billion by 2025. The high growth of the e-commerce industry offers a lot of opportunities for the logistic companies in Vietnam, but also a lot of challenges. So the Vietnamese, because the space of e-commerce is getting so big and the packages and the cargo is so much smaller than what the normal general cargo is, that require that locally in Vietnam, we are investing a lot in fulfillment centers. We are not able to handle the current e-commerce market and the growth of the e-commerce market with the current capacity. So we have to increase a lot. We have to get foreign investment in terms of fulfill the e-commerce market and getting the right warehousing, fulfillment center, and last mile delivery. We have in Vietnam one of the highest logistic costs in the region. And in order to keep up with the demand on e-commerce and being able to support both local and international e-commerce, we need to keep finding ways to keep it cost effective. In Vietnam, the traffic is such a big issue. So to deliver one package, let's say across Ho Chi Minh, easily take 1 hour. So in order to complete that, you need more than one warehouse. You need different fulfillment centers, and you need also to develop your local distribution network. That is the same challenge as the big e-commerce companies are facing. So you have Amazon, you have Lazada, these guys, even though they have their own warehouse, their own delivery network, they still rely on the local logistic partners to fulfill the demand and cover their wider geographic area. In Vietnam, you have the north, you have Hanoi, which is a quite developed city, you have Ho Chi Minh, quite developed in the south, and you have Da Nang. But outside those areas, there is quite far between each city, and there is quite far between the warehousing and the deliveries. Meaning, if you want to cover e-commerce in the nationwide, you need to be able to have a lot of distribution centers. The same reason that ITL has now more than 50 locations around in Vietnam is to be able to cover a bigger geographic area. Third, I don't want to go into too much to the details because it was pretty much covered by John, but that in the logistic industry, we're seeing a lot of foreign investment, mergers and acquisitions. In 2017 and 2018, Gemedev CJ, that was Samsung with Minfeng. 2019, that was a lot of, also Gemedev again, a big investment. Symphony Asia with ITL. And also some Korean financial groups have purchased supply centers in Vietnam, which is also helping increasing the warehouse. In 2020, even during COVID, as Vinny was so nice to mention, ITL has just received a 70 million funding loan from IFC. We have also finalized the acquisition of SoTrans Group, which has a port operation, etc. So the market trend is the big Vietnamese companies starting to merge and starting to get foreign investment in order to keep up with the demand and also compete with the global internationals. Fourth, I want to talk a little bit about is the DC bypass / the destination handling outsourcing. So what happens in the current warehouse market is that because Vietnam's salary is so low, because the market is developing enough now to being able to outsource some of the destination handling into Vietnam, we are seeing a big trend from retailers and from textile companies, etc., where they are closing or narrowing down their distribution centers in the United States and Europe. So what happens is that the retailers keep finding ways to reduce the cost, and the product speed to the market. The best way to do that is to cut off their distribution centers in the US and in Europe. We have in Vietnam being able now to create good enough warehouse locations to be able to handle distribution center. That means that we're taking what normally we will send a container to, let's say, Los Angeles, and they will put that into the distribution center and then split out to different retailers. All that is now starting to be handled in Vietnam, where we are labeling per store level. All the pick and pack orders is done in Vietnam. So now picking up from the factory, taking into the warehouse, pick and pack, split it out per store level, send it to ocean freight, take it to a warehouse, and then send it directly out. So what's happening in the industry now, and what's going to happen in the next many years, is that more and more of the labor and more of the handling will be done in Vietnam instead of US. One of the challenges we're going to have by that is that we need to keep up with both the quality, the security standards, to make sure that we follow the international standards for both customs, anti-terrorism, etc. When does it make sense to do the DC bypass? It makes sense if you're a mid-size, small-size company, and you have, let's say, 1 or 2 distribution centers in the US or 1 or 2 in Europe. Instead of sending cargo into only Los Angeles, and you then truck it from Los Angeles to New York, to East Coast, West Coast, and same in Europe, to between all Europe, you're letting the forwarders and the warehouse providers doing that work for you. And that's really the trend in the market. Now, just to give a quick summary, right? The Vietnam's logistic market is growing extremely fast. We have seen a big increase year on year on cargo. We have many investments in terms of warehousing, ports, airports, etc. But the biggest challenge is still the road network. The road network in Vietnam is right now not covering the demand. Even though there's a lot of investment, a lot of developments, in my opinion, the biggest challenge we're going to have over the next 5 years is not how big a warehouse we can build, how much money we can invest in new ports, new local assets, but it is really how can the road conditions keep up with the demand. So we don't build a warehouse outside Ho Chi Minh, but the road condition out to that warehouse is too poor. That's it from my side, and I'm looking forward to receive your questions. If you have anything in terms of the logistics that you want to discuss after, please feel free also to reach out to me directly, and I'll always be happy to have a chat about the logistics in Vietnam and what is the needs. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thanks for keeping to the time frame. There is so much room for entry and development in the logistics and warehouse sectors. But the scary thing is that the North-South highway is projected to finish in 2030. I don't know if I'll be around for 2030 in Vietnam, but I certainly hope that they will speed it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So just to remind the attendants that you may want to send in your questions through the Q&A tab, and you don't have to wait till we are ready for the panel discussion. Michael from BW Industrial Development is going to bring up the rear for the next presentation. BW Industrial Development can still be called a new kid on the block as a warehouse developer, having entered the Vietnam market with an initial 200 million USD investment and ballooning by the year. We have Mr. Michael Chan, the head of sales and marketing of BW Industrial Development here today. Michael is engaged in all aspects of the marketing process of BW in Vietnam, including site development, marketing strategy, and implementation and sales strategy delivery. Before joining BW, Michael is the managing director of NSO, a well-established local real estate consultancy focused on sourcing industrial land. Michael will share with us today how multi-story fulfillment solution is the future of logistic real estate. Michael, over to you, and please try to keep to the time so that we can have this exciting discussion for the panel.
Thank you, Winnie. Can you see me? I have turned on my video.
Yes, we can see you. If you can host your presentation, then we can see that too.
All right, that's good. Good morning, everybody. So just hold on a minute. Let me pull up the screen here. Right. Okay.
All right, if you can put on projection mode, then we're set to go.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks Hkbav for organizing this webinar. So this morning I'm going to do a little bit of like sharing with you all. BW Industrial, as mentioned, we are kind of a newbie in the market. We are a joint venture between Warburg Pincus, one of the world's largest like private equity, and based in US. And then we have and together with like Becamex, one of the biggest like state-owned company in Vietnam, doing like industrial park development. So BW Industrial was set up in 2018 with the vision of becoming Vietnam's largest for rent industrial property developer. So far, we have like 14 sites in 7 key industrial cities. We have like land bank over 380 hectares. We will continue to invest and then expand into more locations. So basically, you can see from the map here that we have like most of our projects are concentrated in the north, either in the north or in the south. So Ho Chi Minh, Binh Duong, Dong Nai, and then in the north will be in Bắc Ninh, Hải Dương, and Hải Phòng. So most of our products will be either like factories or warehouse. We can do build to suit, or we can build something standard so that the investors can come in quickly and set up their business. So our business model is like pretty straightforward. So we don't usually sell our asset, and we don't, unlike ITL, we don't do any warehouse operation at all. So we are basically purely a real estate developer. So this morning, from the real estate developer angle, I want to share with you all like what we see in the near future, the design of the warehouse in Vietnam going to be. And then we believe multi-story building is going to be the trend. There will be a transformation from what we see usually in the market, which is like single story. Previously, some may not even have like loading bays. So upcoming, there will be more requirements on more sophisticated warehouse coming up. And then this like multi-story building is what we think is going to be more popular for some of the reasons that we are going to mention in the following slides. So the for the development of like multi-story building warehouse is basically something like not so new already in some of the other countries. Why is like multi-story warehouse needed? What is it? So basically, it's a building more than one floor, warehouse more than one floor. In order to transport the cargoes vertically, some may use like cargo lift, some may have like drive-up ramp to the second or upper floors. Why multi-story building will be needed? It's like because of the urban market is like or the urban region is like basically shown for like industrial is like not so much, and then the pricing has gone up so much. Then the warehouse, if there is any industrial land found, then it has to go in the vertical direction as to capture as much space as possible. So you can see from the map here, like in other countries, you can see from, for instance, Hong Kong, where I came from. So you can see like the, it's like pretty common to find like 12 floors of warehouse next to the Kwai Chung port area. And then you can see the rental pricing is like basically industrial rental pricing is the highest in the region, up to $24 US dollars. I mean, like it's, in Vietnam, it's like much cheaper. But and then in other countries like Singapore, in Japan, industrial and warehousing land are also pretty rare when we talk about like close to city area. And then to them, it's like building high-rise warehouse is also a solution to go. So this is basically telling you guys like the development of like multi-story buildings, multi-story warehouse in other countries. And then we believe like Hong Kong is probably the first region in the market to have like the development of multi-story warehouse that was almost like 70 years ago. And it's pretty common that in Hong Kong that we can see like 20 floors, 30 floors of like warehouse. This in the picture here, down here, we can see the green white building in the picture. Probably most of the floors are served by cargo lift, with a few floors with like ramp access, and the ramp is like built inside the building, rather than like you can see from the bottom right hand corner, the ramp is like actually outside the building, and the one on the top is like you can see a massive like ramp structure attached to the building. So it depends on the requirements, depends on the design, or depends on the building codes for each country. Then the design will be slightly different. So let me go to like the next section of like why multi-story is going to be a trend in Vietnam. So the basic idea is like the basic trend we see is like the delivery requirements is getting more time tight. People or consumers are looking for like next day delivery to hourly deliveries. So consumers are basically getting a little bit more difficult to serve nowadays, whether it is like a individual consumer who trying to shop for apparels online, or like any retail shops in a shopping mall who use like third-party logistics firm to do like store replenishment. Both of these types of like companies or like people, consumers, they want to have the deliveries to be made as fast as possible. This can be challenging for the service providers if they don't have a distribution center or fulfillment center close enough to the client or to the consumers. Coupled with the fact that like the infrastructure in Vietnam is not so good, as mentioned by previous speaker, and then the high logistics land cost, and also the high population density, make this like mission of like delivery getting more difficult. So let me go into a little bit further detail on the couple of factors. So poor infrastructure in urban areas make like delivery as a logistical nightmare. You can see from the map of like Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, delivery to the city center is basically impossible if the driving distance is more than 20-ish kilometers. So the red circle is like surrounding the CBD indicates the driving hour, 1 hour to the CBD. So you can see the 30 kilometers from the CBD is like basically would take more than 1 hour. So getting the deliveries to the city center within 1 hour is like essential, because like for the logistics operation, pick, pack, loading the trucks, driving to the location, and then complete the delivery is like will take basically half a day if they don't have like the facility close enough to the city. So the poor infrastructure in the urban area definitely make this like very, very challenging. The number 2 factor that we can see is like the population density is like getting much higher because of the urbanization. Ho Chi Minh City, in particular, the population density is already higher than like Shanghai region. Hong Kong is like 6,000 something people per kilometers. Ho Chi Minh is like 4,000 something per kilometer. But we believe like as there's going to be more high-rise residential building in Ho Chi Minh or in Hanoi, the population density and the urbanization is going to bring this like population density even higher. And you can see with the per capita income also as well, like it's going to increase, and there are more brands coming to Vietnam. We can see Muji and Uniqlo, they have like new shops in the downtown. Despite this COVID-19, their stores are always packed. So all these retailers, they would like to have their distribution center or fulfillment center close enough to their stores. And then next factor that we can see like driving for the demand for the warehousing space will be actually the supply is actually very limited. You can see from the occupancy rate, this is a pretty old figure. Like in 2019 first quarter, the occupancy rate is like close to 90% in the south and 84% in the north. And actually, what we feel is actually like the occupancy rate is like almost 100% in recent days. And then you can see the rental price as well. Like in Binyu is like more than $100 per square meter for the lease, for the long-term lease right now. And then the year-on-year increase is more than 50%. The rental pricing in Ho Chi Minh, here we got the record of like 150 on average, but in fact that we as a warehouse developer or real estate developer, where we are trying to source land in the city, is like very hard there's basically no first-hand like land available. We have to source from like either like secondary market. The price can go up to more than $300 per square meter. And then the last but not least, like as mentioned by previous speaker as well, like the explosive growth of like the e-commerce is driving the demand for warehousing space in the city area. It's like projected that like the Vietnam, the e-commerce CAGR growth will be up to 37%, which is like highest in the region. And to serve these like e-commerce delivery, the express market is also growing by projected to have a growth of like 35% per year, all the way to 2024. So basically, with all these factors that we mentioned, the demand for warehouse is like going to be very high, and the supply is like going to be very limited. So as a warehouse developer or logistics company, what sort of like solution they can find in order to cater this demand? And what we think is that the warehouse, multi-story warehouse, is going to be one of the solutions. So what we can see, like in the south, actually there are a number of warehouses near the Ho Chi Minh City area. They are already having more than one story, which are indicated in the map. For I think like in the north, there are much less like high-story building, because like probably the south, they have higher population density. The land price is also higher, and then the infrastructure is also not as good as like in Hanoi area. So in the south, we also have like one big piece of land obtained like in the northwest side of the Ho Chi Minh City, which is like within 1 hour drive to the city area. We have 40 hectares of land there. We purchased the land, and we got like e-commerce, like some e-commerce big giant to commit space before we have like the building ready for handover. So this is our sister company, ESR. They are listed in Hong Kong. This is one of their projects in Korea. You can see their modern or future warehouse, what we think is going to look like. And then this will not just happen in Korea, it will not just happen in China, but this kind of model, this kind of warehouse will be brought into Vietnam very soon. So you can see like the access ramp, you have like more parking areas. Sometimes you may even have to do the rooftop parking. You have like solar panel roof. You have like cross dock to facilitate so many truckings, so many containers in and out for not just the ground floor clients, but also for the upper floor clients as well. So basically, this is what we see from the developer, the design of warehouse in the upcoming days. I think this is pretty much my presentation today. Thanks for the time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Michael. And I can't wait bringing all of you guys up to the screen for the discussion. We have some very smart participants who have sent in some questions that I pretty much have prepared also. So if you will unhost your presentation, and I can invite back Alex and John to participate. I apologize to the participants for running late, but there's just too much good information to forego. So looks like we are ready. I need to ask these questions to, I'm going to start with Michael, and then there may be follow-up questions for John and Alex at the same time. Michael, multi-story sounds great. Obviously, building multi-story warehouses will cost more. And so how do we keep the pricing reasonable in Vietnam for that to happen? And you see that the demand is high, and it looks like pretty high tech what you guys are bringing in, and the demand is high. So even though we are the cheapest in the region right now, how does it look going forward?
I think the lens scarcity is going to play a big part, and then demand is like growing explosively because of the not just like the e-commerce market, not just the retail market, but also like the FDI companies. They are coming into Vietnam. They have more export output. So, and then the port area is like, for instance, in Ho Chi Minh is so close to the city center as well. So the demand and supply is going to be still in a pretty imbalanced situation. So multi-story is going to be what we think is going to be a solution. And then if we don't build multi-story, probably the construction cost is going to be lower. But then for us, I mean, as a developer, probably we cannot cater or capture as much demand as possible. So I think like to have like multi-story building, the upper floors is going to be a little bit cheaper because, but then that will help some of the business to, which is suitable for some of the business, so they can still maintain their fulfillment center close enough to the city, but at the same time like afford to the area with an affordable rate.
Okay, Michael, I'm going to hold you to it. You said that the cost is going to come down for building. So I'm hoping that the cost of this multi-warehouse thing is not going to go up in terms of price. Then how about Alex? It's like, in order to, when we have more warehouse, we obviously have to work smarter. And then in this world, we're definitely talking about digitization. We're talking about robots and all of those stuff. And how is ILT preparing for that? Sorry, ITL.
Yeah, very good question. So in general, we split that up in two. So we have the technology side of it, where we have also in ITL invested in our own IT company and our own developers, where we're building WMS systems, etc. in-house. There is kind of a few stages in that program, right? I mean, first stage is controlling based on current warehouse and in and outflow. Optimization of cost in Vietnam, cost to serve, even though salary is quite low, is still high. So the cost to serve customers is quite high. In terms of the e-commerce business, that's where I really believe that robots and optimization, less labor coming in, because the packages or the cargo is so much smaller, that in order to have the labor cost, that is a really big high cost to serve. So the way we're looking at it is we split it in two. Our e-commerce business is willing and looking into more robots, but also more technology in terms of how to manage it, where our traditional freight forwarding cargo is much more technology driven. When that's said, that's the current stage. I think that, as Michael also mentioned, the future of the warehousing in Vietnam as well as worldwide will be a lot more automated. And a lot more multi-storage, e-commerce fulfillment centers but in Vietnam, it's probably not going to be the first place to do it, but it's going to be driven by the e-commerce, and then general cargo going to follow later.
All right, John, you're not going anywhere. We're ready for you. All right. So now that we've heard about all these multi-story and there's limited supply, but it's increasing demand, what is your projection in terms of the warehouse pricing? Maybe we take into consideration multi-stories versus traditional. What's your industry view? I need your microphone to be turned on, John.
Sorry, Winnie, my apologies. We've been moving around a bit. Well, I mean, listen, multi-stories are very interesting. even at Savills, we're seeing some investors come to us this year and inquire specifically about this type of product and how to build it and what the demand is like from the end users. A few things to understand is Vietnam has a long way to go with multi-level warehouses and even multi-level factories, but it's nothing new here. I think Tan Thuan EPZ have been doing it for many years. We see Sepzone building it as well in Linh Trung. And yeah, so we're seeing more and more of these products in the market. Saigon High Tech Park is another good example with multi-level facilities. The thing is, you need to have these facilities, obviously, as Michael mentioned, close to the main city business districts, where there's actually going to be demand for end users. Pricing this year still, I see, remains relatively stable in the multi-level facilities. I've seen a higher rise from 2018 on the standard ready-built warehouse, the one-floor facilities, as I have with the multi-levels, but the multi-levels tend to have quite a high price anyway, due to the proximity to the city centers.
All right, John. So now we are all talking about COVID impact, that there has been almost no in and out traffic of people since the beginning of the year, closer to the end of Q1 until now. When is the borders going to open is anybody's guess. That means it's like e-commerce continue to boom while that our investors are unable to come in. So questions for all three of you, maybe I'll start with Michael. That is just like, how is it impacting the delivery to clients or clients coming? Lots of them just talking. How do we get through the next 6 months, for example? Microphone, please, Michael.
Hey, sorry. So for BW, we consider ourselves to be lucky. I mean, that we have two types of product. We have warehouse for the mostly the targeting to those like international investors, and then we have warehouse who are like logistics users like in local. We are actually doing both. We are doing pretty good. I mean, like depends on the industry. Pharmaceuticals, they are expanding their business. Textile maybe not so much. So electronics, we can see a lot more queen bees or big companies are expanding their operation here. So for the factory-wise, the leasing occupancy actually does meet the target that we set before the COVID time. So actually not, we are doing pretty well. For the warehousing, I think the delay in, of course, the retail market, supermarket, all these are doing quite well, but then in general, the retail market is not doing so good. Probably the warehousing leasing decision is a little bit slower than what we projected in the early days. But for the pricing wise, I think it's still pretty stable. This year doesn't like really fall because of this like COVID thing. All
right, Alex, on your end.
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question, right? We have seen, and also a lot of the people in the industry have actually seen increases in terms of warehouse demand. There's many reasons for that. One reason is that the manufacturers are still producing, but the importers countries are importing less. So let's say if you look at the big brands, Nike, Adidas, etc., they're still producing to the capacity or the factory sales, but they need to store it in Vietnam for a longer term. So normally, if we talk about the CFS warehouse, normally that will be in and out within a few days. Now we're seeing more a trend of 3 to 4 weeks of that same cargo. Then we also having the e-commerce market, of course, is increasing, meaning that our distribution centers are also doing quite well and quite full. In many areas, depending on whether it's for export cargo or domestic use, we also seeing a bit of an increase in warehouse space and warehouse rent. So, but that's again, it's not as a landlord, but it's more like as a logistic provider. The services rates are going up a bit. We have this different part of warehousing, right? So we have both where our owner is leased it out as a dedicated space. We also have where we own blue labor. Then we have the full service warehouses. The full service multi-user warehouses is where we see the increased rates. Fixed space, etc., is remain very stable, I would say.
All right, John, when are they coming?
Well, as soon as possible, I certainly hope. I mean, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing anyway, I mean, from the agency side, as I'm sure at Colliers, it's the same, you know, there's new logistics platforms are interested in coming to Vietnam. Even during COVID-19, they're inquiring about the market here. They're asking about what we expect next year. One interesting thing to point out is a lot of the industrial parks that are within an hour to Hanoi, within an hour to Ho Chi Minh, some of them realize now that when they initially did their master plan, that not enough land was put away for logistics. There was too much put away for the manufacturing, because now to get land in Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi is so difficult for the last mile distribution centers. They need to look at Long Am, Dong Nai, Bac Ninh in the north. And some of the industrial parks in those provinces, now some of them are even going back and taking some remaining plots and converting it with the local authorities for manufacturing to logistics to try and accommodate the demand for more distribution centers, more warehouses. But that's a painful process. It can take quite a while, and it takes a lot of capital up front from the developer. And you know, who knows if the end user is going to wait for them to convert that land or go somewhere else. So this is one thing from now on, developers need to understand this heavy demand with the logistics at the moment, and do their master plans and FS accordingly to that. So that's why we're seeing as well with the multi-level warehouses and distribution centers, is because the limited land that's available within 30, 40 kilometers from the cities. So they need to build up. With regards to when they're coming, I mean, I certainly expect next year, if restrictions are lifted, given by who we're talking to. But you know, definitely not going to count our chickens at this stage.
All right. Now, this is going to be my last questions. Not that I really want to make it the last questions, but we're seriously overrunning. So we're seeing a shift well, obviously, John has just pointed out that a lot of the master plans has planned for more manufacturing than warehousing. And it is a very long and lengthy process to do the conversion. All right. So we're seeing that it looks like more and more of the new entry of the clients are shifting to the north. And because of the lack of warehouses, the manufacturing are also shifting to the north. It certainly looks that way. Is someone can give me some validation, or you're going to say, no, that's not the case? Again, shall we start with John?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you, actually. I mean, I think you're pretty right. We're seeing the same thing. Well, as I quickly went over in my presentation, the bigger projects are still looking to the north. And as I also mentioned, there's more prime industrial land in between the new infrastructure developments in the north. Listen, if you drive around Dong Nai, maybe not Bình Nhưỡng, but I think Dong Nai and Long An especially, I think the road networks there are so much more congested than they are in the north. If you're in the north and you're driving from Haiphong to Hanoi, that's arguably the best road in Vietnam. So a lot of the good intermodal transport network links are in the north, and a lot of the newer industrial parks are there, so they have more vacant land. Now, when you compare it with the south, it's important to remember that a lot of the industrial parks in the south are some of the oldest industrial parks in Vietnam, such as Bin Hoa 1 and 2 in Dong Nai. Those parks are developed in the late 70s, I believe, so their lease term has already ran out. So a lot of the parks, even Ho Chi Minh as well, the infrastructure there, the water supply, wastewater treatment is not the best that it could be. But a lot of the parks in the north, and Bac Ninh in particular, are newer industrial parks, maybe longer lease terms, and therefore have more vacant land available. Right.
Does it look the same for you, Alex?
Yeah, I actually 100% agree with John, right? I mean, in reality, right now, the demand in Ho Chi Minh is a bit higher, but the trend is going to Hanoi. And that is because of the area between Hanoi and Haiphong. There is still a lot of space, and there is still a lot of new developments, newer factories. To some extent, maybe more support from the government, right? In terms of developing those areas more than in the south where it is developed and is older. If you want to build a new warehouse, which ITL we do, right? We just received $70 million. We do want to build new warehouses. If we will have to find land and areas nearby Ho Chi Minh, is quite difficult. A lot of it is government owned, it's owned by Saigon Newport, etc. Where in the north is just easier in Bac Ninh and those areas where you have the factory zone too. So the demand itself is more in the south, but it's just so much easier in the north right now. And you also see the big players coming in. But as a logistic provider, the risk about the north is also that the manufacturing companies that are moving to the north are so big that they might have their own warehousing.
Mhm.
So it's
So
been, yeah.
great, Alex. So Michael, how is BW positioned to fill this void, or are you going to lead the trend?
We want to lead the trend probably, and then I mean in terms of land bank, we are number one right now, and probably will stay there for some time, hopefully. And then in terms of like the questions of like whether the business are going to the north or they prefer the south, I think the demand definitely in the south is like stronger. Over the like past years, and probably from the projection of the e-commerce company, the south, the footprint they need in the south is like still bigger than the north. Doing business wise, probably in the south is much more flexible, while in the north you may get like some government support, so those big companies may prefer the north. But small, medium-sized company, especially from the Western world, they prefer to stay in the south rather than the north. The north, because of the proximity to China, a lot of like those like supply chain are moving to prefer to the north rather than the south. That's like pretty understandable. But then overall demand, I think like maybe from our perspective, probably around 60-40 split, like 60 go to the south, 40 go to the north.
All right. Well, it is very informative, and I'm glad to see that we are aligned from agency to logistics provider to warehouse developer. And so thank you, John. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your thoughts with us. A video of this webinar will also be available in the next 48 hours on our website, and we will also share the PowerPoint slides with the participants. On behalf of Hong Kong Business Association Vietnam and Becamex Hospitality, thank you for spending time with us today, and hope that you have enjoyed it. So if there is a topic you would like to hear from us, or if you are interested in being featured on one of our future webinars, do reach out to us. So until then, see you again in person, hopefully, and very soon. And thank you for participating. We will be sending answers to some of the questions we don't have time for, and then we will keep in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Good day.